Hello, everybody, and welcome to our end of season YouTube chat for Align Farms Regen trial. I'm joined today by Kiri Roberts and Rhys Roberts, and yeah, we'll get right into the discussion. So, yeah, what did you guys find was some of the big learnings from this past season? Rhys, we can start with you.
I guess for us, there's been a lot of, whether or not there's been any great change in the learnings, there's been a lot of like incremental increases to the learnings around, especially in particular around how and when we grow our feed, which is hypercritical to a dairy farm. So that's one thing that I think has been a learning that we can share later on. Is we've probably seen an acceleration of this kind of really rocket foot shaped pasture graph. So that's an area that needs further work. Probably if we look at another learning was, this year, like the last couple of years have been quite challenging pasture conditions or farming conditions in mid-Canterbury. And this year we got a really, really good one, probably one out of the bag. I think out of the 6 farms, 4 farms did record production this year. And what we did find was that the conventional farming system benefited greater to those favourable conditions than we did on the regenerative system. So one could argue that that's a sign of greater resilience or less resilience. That's the eye of the beholder. So that was an interesting learning from this year, was just how the two systems handled quite a swing in favourable weather conditions. And so that the big one for me is, and it's no real great revelation that it's all won and lost on pasture management. And whether we've got that right, or we're still learning, or we're getting it completely wrong, I'm unsure. But all I do know is that we need to continue to collect and collate that data and make sure that we're learning from those successes and those mistakes. So that's probably my key learning from this year was, we haven't cracked this pasture curve yet, and maybe we never will. Who knows? But I'm hungry to crack it. Put it that way.
Yeah, definitely see if we can improve those results a little bit on the regen side.
Yep.
Kiri, what about yourself?
So pretty much the same in regards to having smaller learnings consistently over the year on both sides has pretty much been it. Learning a little bit more about the diverse species and where, and I don't know the answer, but where we need to probably tailor it a little bit more for different parts of the season. To hopefully benefit us into having more feed is probably the biggest thing. But like I said, I don't actually have the answer to that. I just know that it's not as easy as just chucking diverse species into paddocks and then hoping that it will grow or banking on that it'll do its thing. Every season is going to be different. So I think that's one thing that to try and make us not as vulnerable in the seasons where we don't get the really hot months. But yeah, so lots of little learnings over the season. But to be fair, I went into the season as an overall goal to just make milk. We've had 2, 3, I can't remember how many years we've been doing this, but it wasn't great. It wasn't awesome sharing the data. The milk production wasn't great. The animal, the repo wasn't great. And I just said to myself, if there's one thing that we're going to get this year, it's going to be milk. And that was my goal for the whole year. And I didn't care what got me it. I just had to make sure that happened. So I knew that things would follow, and they did. So that was cool, and we had a really good year. I'm still really proud of the regen side. And 13.22 a hectare on the regen side. I know it's not amazing if you compare it to the conventional, but there's not too much in it in regards to cow, but we're still, it's on the up. So yeah, a lot of learnings, but very small ones.
Yeah. And I was actually reading there's an article about the study they're doing up at Mass University, and the farm manager of that trial was talking about if she had her own farm, what she would be doing. And yeah, saying a mixture of different pasture species as well as crops to kind of work with that feed availability throughout the season. So I think it's really valuable that there's all these multiple trials going on around the country, and so we can get more clear on what the best approach is to get this pasture management right.
I think we're kind of, out of all the trials, I think we're all saying similar things.
Yeah.
So that is quite good.
Yes.
A bit painful because it means that no one's really got the answer yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is quite good to hear that everyone's kind of feeling, in the same situation.
Yeah. And to know that there's a lot of other people and scientists and farmers working on it and putting their brains to it. So collectively we can hopefully, make progress here. Yeah. Cool. Well, do you guys have a particular highlight from the season?
Has to be the milk production.
Yeah.
Like I said, set the goal out and that was it. And everything else was just, it'll be what it'll be. Obviously animal health, that has been really, really good. From like our end of year milk quality reports and everything, it's looking really, really good. We're, slowly everything's getting better and more in the green. And yeah, the animal health, we've just felt it was a lot easier season, and that was pretty cool to see. And then I guess that followed on to milk production. So yeah, I think conventional was about 450 a cow and Regen was about 430 a cow. So that's the kind of numbers that we want to see, and I'm hoping that we can just maintain that for this season, and then we can focus on other things. But yeah, milk production and animal health is probably the biggest highlight.
How about yourself, Rhys?
I think a highlight was at a macro level was just having a more favourable season certainly helps. You probably felt that we've been up against it for the last couple of years, so that was good. And that's company wide. But I think the big one for us was, we executed to a plan that we've been in the pipe dream for 2 or 3 years to try and winter as many cows as we can on grass and do away with winter cropping. And that's been a strategy around, how we improve animal performance. And I think we reaped the rewards of that this year, which was good. The trick shot now is how do we continue to do that year in, year out on a dry land property with swings with weather. So that's probably the one that we just need to find a little bit more resilience in that system, which we're tailoring and understand the opportunities there. So that was probably the big highlight for me was, executing to a plan and then seeing the animal benefits, animal performance benefits kind of flow through the business from there. So that was probably the big highlight, and that's made up of milk production, reproduction, animal health, animal welfare, and even just from a people perspective, it's a much better wintering environment to be in when you've got that opportunity to do that. So it's not for everyone, but for us, we feel it's something that we just because you've got a unique proposition, i.e. quite a large dry land dairy support farm mid-cannery, doesn't mean that you shouldn't work to your strengths. So I think we need to try and double down on that and continue to maximise that opportunity that we have going forward. But this current season, we've certainly a lot drier for a lot longer, which meant we've been under pressure from a grass production perspective, which we always knew was the ultimate risk. And we were hoping it would be a 1 in 10 year event and we'd get it in year 10 rather than year 2, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So that's the big highlight for me, is how do we continue to grow that side of our business.
Cool. All right. And then, do you have a disappointment from the season, Kiri?
Probably just the grass growth. A little bit on both sides, but mainly on the Regen side. That was just disappointing. Obviously, it is quite a drop, and I will say that this year we did our own plate walks, and that's the data that we actually used rather than the independent tow behind. I found that the 2 years that we used the independent tow behind at the start of the trial, it was incorrect, I guess, I felt it was more incorrect on the Regen side, because you have a lot more stalk and a lot more things that can, affect the laser. So I did find it a little bit more inconsistent. So although there has been a big drop when you look at the graphs, I don't believe that the drop was as big. I do believe there's been a drop, but I don't believe it's as big. So yeah, that's probably been the biggest disappointment. But I just don't think we've had the heat. Like, as soon as you get the heat, the diverse grasses go crazy. And we didn't really have that heat for a long period of time. However, we did manage to stick to good round lengths, and we were able to cut silage and things like that, and push our round lengths out really early. So it was a pretty good season. But yeah, it would have been great if we were able to have, a bit more grass.
Yeah. How about yourself, Rhys?
Yeah, I guess, we jumped 120 milk solids a hectare on the conventional side, and only 20 milk solids a hectare on the regenerative. That was probably the big disappointment for me. It would have been, on one hand, it's bloody great. We've lifted 120 on one side of the farm, but from a regenerative perspective, it would have been, good to see that similar kind of lift on the regen side too. But hey, yeah, there's not one thing that I can point at as a reason for that. That's just what we did. That was what we encountered. So I wouldn't say it's a disappointment, but it would have been good to see similar lifts on both sides with the similar season that we encountered.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, to see what happens next year. We continue on, okay, so we'll go into some more specific discussions now about some areas. So we'll start with animal health, which has been mentioned a few times, but if you want to go into more detail about that, Kiri.
Yeah, so the animal health, we did have quite a bit of improvement. I honestly just put that down to grass wintering. Having no transition is pretty amazing to deal with. You literally can bring cows home almost the day before they calve, kind of thing. Like, it was that put us in a really good position for on farm. And the cows were just so content the whole winter. Obviously, it was quite dry until July, so that can play a part. But yeah, I just found that the grass wintering had a huge effect on just not having that transition for the girls, and then actually being able to have a break. But animal health wise, we managed to keep the cows come in in really good condition, and we managed to maintain it quite well. I think conventional set at 4.6 throughout the whole year. Regen did drop mid-mating to 4.5, which is not textbook. However, they got a much better in-calf rate than conventional. Conventional was 19% empty and Regen was 13% empty, and overall 72% 6 week, which, to get back into the 70s was and that all I cared about, as long as they had a 7 in front of it. I didn't actually care what it was. But so I think we just sat really good through the whole year, and the team felt that it just was a lot smoother. We weren't having a lot of issues. We used the collars to our advantage with cows calving and retains and things like that. We had very little retains, very little retains, and very little use of drugs. A lot more maybe antibiotics type. Not a lot more anti-inflammatories, which we do use quite a bit of that. But we find that it is makes a massive difference, and you don't have to go down the antibiotic route. So yeah, animal health wise, I was really stoked, and so was the team. Death rate was really low, and yeah, so overall very, very happy. I think our death rate was just under 3% for the season. So yeah, pretty happy with how it went.
Great. Rhys, how about yourself?
Yeah, animal health. I think the big one here was that, as mentioned before, the flow-ins from that winter feed, and trying to really understand what those non-tangible benefits are of. We all know that the economics of grass wintering, if you look at it just in isolation, doesn't stack up when you compare that against some of the high yielding winter feed options, and I'm not going to dispute that. That's 100% correct. However, we if you look at it at a wider lens around the benefits of to the animal and the flow-on effects to the wider business, that's when it really starts to become quite an interesting discussion. So, only a year's data, so I'm not going to hold my head on it, but certainly we've seen a rapid improvement in animal health and behaviour and performance off the back of that year. So hopefully we can continue that going forward. And yeah, as I say, it was good to see some improvement in calf rates and between the herds, because that will drive animal performance, in particular production for the following year, if we can get cows and calf earlier and extend days of milk, etc., etc. So overall, I'm quite interested to really try and quantify what these tangible benefits are of a change in wintering practices, that can be explained in layman's terms for the wider community to have a look at and say, hey, look, should this be included in the argument, rather than just saying that I can grow a feed for 10 cents and grass costs me 20 cents? Well, what are the benefits to the cow long term? So that's mission for me over the next 12 months, is try and be able to articulate that clearly.
Yeah, because as we are exploring with this regen stuff, finances aren't the only metric that matter. And yeah, it will be really interesting to see if how the mating results go this year, and if the trend of differences between the regen and conventional continue. I'm very curious to see that. Yeah, next up is pasture. So yeah, we have talked a little bit about the disappointing growth. Anything you want to add to that, Kiri?
So the round lengths was my fastest for regen was 27, and I got out to a 74 and late lactation, and then for conventional it was 20 and then 50. So round lengths sat pretty good. I was really happy we're able to get on to a longer round length come February, whereas the past 2 seasons February's actually been really hard, and it's been near impossible to even push round length out with a lot of supplement. So I think pasture, the biggest learning is the biggest thing is how do we go into the season and try and bank up more feed in other ways, and whether that be longer round lengths. But my biggest thing is I really don't want to lose the quality, because at the end of the day, quality makes milk. I don't care what anyone says, that's just fact. So how can we do that, and what does that look like? And I think the deferred grazing is probably where I sit in that space at the moment. But as time goes on, there's been many conversations around having different species, maybe planting out different species to suit different times of the year and things like that. But I think slightly business as usual, but how can we bank up more feed when we need it?
And Rhys, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think the big one around pasture is how do we optimise that pasture curve and to better suit our requirements of a pastoral farming business. So, have we nailed that? No, we haven't. Are we interested in other opportunities? Yes, we are. We've really just looked at pasture diversity and fertiliser changes as the two variables. There are still a lot of other options that we can explore going forward. So around pasture management, around soil health and soil biology. So I think we just need to continue to work on that and understand that pasture curve well. It's pretty much the key variable in this farming system. The more grass we can grow at the right times of the year, the more profitable this farm system will be. It's a pretty simple equation, farming. So for me, that's what we need to try and execute too. So I've got some stuff I can share at the end there around some of to really spell it out of where some of the challenges are, and I'll leave my comments for there. But that's the big one for us, is we need to explore more than just pasture species and fertilizer regimes, and start looking at what are some of the other tools that we've got as well to optimize that pasture curve.
Yeah, cool. All right. How about in the supplement space? You mentioned you cut silage, Kiri. Anything else to add?
Yeah, so cut silage at pretty much the same time as what I did last year. Well, actually, no, one cut in November and one cut at start of January was the 2 cuts. Supplement seemed to be as per normal, really. And yeah, there's not much else. We've had to put supplement in when Regen wasn't able to, when we weren't growing great rates and grass. So that is a little bit frustrating, and that's where we would quite like to, in an ideal world where I thought it would be, is we would have very little supplement going in for Regen, and maybe only silage, and then we wouldn't have to rely on it. But we're still having to rely on it. We're actually having to rely on it even more than the conventional, and that's a little bit frustrating, because I kind of thought it was going to be the opposite. So be great if we can try and get that down a bit.
Anything to add, Rhys?
If we can grow more feed, we can feed less supplements again. That's the guts of it, is we need to focus on how we can grow more tonnage, and then we can put less supplement in, which is going to better promote the economics of it. That work in progress.
Yeah. Cool. Anything to say about irrigation?
No, I don't think the irrigation thing's quite hard now, because it's quite hard. There's no difference between this 2 different systems.
Yeah, I think it has more to do with cover than species.
Yeah. When you're dealing with the crops, but I think that would be the same as if you were dealing with kale or any of those big crops. But I don't believe less water for the diverse species as for what we get them up to. But if we had more coverage, then you would essentially use less. However, it's quite hard to do that given pivots.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything to add, Rhys?
Well, I guess, like every action has a reaction, and I guess when we started it, we thought that we'd have higher pasture covers and use less water, which makes complete sense. However, that has an impact on pasture quality, which then has an impact on animal performance, which then has an impact on profitability. So, like, I guess, when due to the nature of us collecting every last bit of data we physically can, you can't optimize everything, can you? Like there's always a reaction to trying to do more milk and do 600 milk solids a cow. The empty rate might go from 15 to 25%. There's an impact to that. So I guess, at the end of the day, the decision that we've made as a management team is that the greater return to us right at the moment is to optimize pasture quality over using less irrigation. However, in 20 years' time, that could be completely different. Our main focus is we've got half the amount of water we have today. We need to optimize irrigation management over pasture quality, and we'd change our practices. We'd go on longer grazing rounds. So I guess right now, our focus is to absolutely grow as much feed as we can of the best quality. In 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 years' time, that could be completely different. We could be quite water scarce in New Zealand and really needing to put our focus on how we, grow water with only 200 mils of irrigation rather than 600 mils or whatever that may be. So that's where we're at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act between all the different factors. Agreed. Yeah. I think, we're in the third season now, so it's probably a bit more business as usual, but how has the team been finding everything?
No, the team have been good. The team have actually been amazing. This is our new norm now, so we don't think anything of it. But in an animal health space, I could not be more proud of the team. The boys treat every cow like it's their own and will do absolutely anything to make sure that she's in a good space. So we have pretty good system in place, and when they make a phone call to me about a sick cow or whatever, they have 5 things that they've already worked out, and so they ring to tell me, and it's just been cool to have them in that space, and like for them to take so much ownership of the cows, because I guess the cows is the biggest thing to get there. It gets me on farm. So from a team perspective, really, really good. Really proud of the boys and what and Ivy on what they've achieved for the system. And yeah, it's business as per usual. And obviously, we have tour groups coming through the farm. We can have up to 2 buses a month, and then another 2 groups coming through, which adds a whole, like, another, there's people in it milking, there's people driving around the farms, walking around, and they just they just take that as the normal now, and are very inviting to people. So yeah, pretty proud of the team and pretty grateful that they've taken on board all of this.
Yeah, the integral part of the trial. So Rhys, anything to add from the outside?
No, I don't. Yeah, I can't really add much more than that. Other than it is a monumental task to split your farm in 2 and run them separately and have 2 different strategies. And the teams handled that well, which is good. And they only get better with age, so it's good.
Great. Yeah. All right. So we have touched on winter briefly, but it'd probably be good to let people know what we're doing this season and why.
So Regen are obviously on grass, and they're pretty much just split into earlies and lates. And then conventional, we're on fodder beet, and we've been lucky enough to now change to kale. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then obviously Rhys touched that the dry late summer and autumn is the reasoning behind that.
Yeah. Anything to add, Rhys?
Yeah, like one of the challenges we always seen was a late autumn drought on our dryland farm. Mount Summers would put the grass wintering under pressure. So for context, last year, most of the feed got to between 3,000 and 4,000 kgs of dry matter. So say 2,500 available. This year, geez, I don't think there's too many paddocks that are over 2,500 for that matter. So it certainly put a pressure on. Most of our paddocks have got anywhere between 500 to 1,000 kgs of dry matter available. So that's put the pressure on, which has forced our hand into putting our cow, like we always had a reserve feed up our sleeve for events like this. Our logic was that, if we could cut out the cost of growing feed and make it a 1 in 10 year event, the savings to the dairy support businesses not investing in crops and crop rotations would mean that we could go out and purchase that feed. We've been lucky enough that we've been able to make it work, because we've got about 2 million kilos of silage on hand. So at the moment, the cows are getting 6 or 7 kilos of silage and 5 of grass, or they're getting 5 of kale or 5 of beet. So it's quite a monumental job, but our long-term intention is to continue with the grass wintering, and we need to. I guess we've been investing quite heavily into a lot of fescue dominated grass, and we have found this year that the fescue came out of the drought worse than some of our diploid grasses. So potentially we just need to optimize our grass species and have a bit more of, not so much diversity as in diversity in each and every paddock, having diverse swards across the farm that will handle a wet winter, a dry summer, a dry autumn, a wet autumn, etc. So that's something that we are working on just to try and optimise it in the future. But we're feeling pretty confident that we can nail it going forward. But this year certainly we have Kiri's cows are on the conventional cows are on kale, and we've got 2 other farms that are grazing on fodder beet at the moment. So it is what it is. We're comfortable. And a lot of straw getting fed out. Straw and solids, getting fed out.
The diet is about 5 kgs of grass, 5 of silage, and 2 of straw. Is the Regen, and then just the conventional is 5 kale, 5 silage, and 2 to 3 of straw. And that's it is going well. We had a bit of a blip with the fodder beet, but as you know, I love fodder beet, so that was just the icing on the cake for me. But yeah, the Regen is sitting good. Obviously that's 12 kilos, and seem to be fine. We can go up to 14 if I feel that the girls are not happy, but they're pretty happy. And you can tell really quickly with grass wintering if the animals aren't happy, because it's quite a bit of a change. Whereas with kale and crop and things like that, cows have different behaviours on those. So it can be quite hard to determine, how much more they actually need. But grass, you can work it out pretty quickly. So yeah, girls are looking good. Probably more on the side of I don't want them actually putting on too much weight, especially those later girls, because they are quite big. I think our late calvers last year were condition scored at 5.1. So I do not want that. But yeah, so far and it's going good. Obviously all wintering is a bit touch and go in the first 10 days. And I think we're on the up, but it's certainly dry. And I must say, it is easy saying, why don't we just put all the grass into diverse species? We have actually done that 2 years in a row, and we didn't get great results out of it. Probably was the species that was in it, but at the end of the day, we did actually trial it. And when it gets dry up there, it is really dry. And so I think even though this year doesn't have much diversity in it, we probably just need to be a bit more strategic, like Rhys said, rather than going full diverse species. Doesn't seem to work up there. And we can't really do the deferred grazing like other people talk about. You've got to remember we're a group, we're not an individual farm. So that's we need to think about the group as a whole, not just focus everything around Clearview. And then the same with the bale grazing. It just didn't seem to work with what we had this year. So that's fine. We'll every year is different.
Yeah.
Some of the challenges to bale grazing from me is trying to get access to good quality hay in Canterbury is awfully challenging. And if we can crack that nut and get it at an affordable, readily available price, I've got nothing against bale grazing. Some of the stuff that we did in the past, I thought that, we wasted a bit of hay or straw, but we also saved a lot of pasture that would have been damaged if the cows were walking up and down the fence line or hugging in the corners. So for me, my brain is quite black and white. I'm like, well, we wasted hay, but we also saved pasture, so we kind of end up in the same spot. Where in the past, I was like, why the hell would you intentionally try and waste feed? That doesn't make any sense. But after trialing myself, I can understand the logic, and I think it's sound. There is benefit to bale grazing. It's just for us, every time I try to make hay, it's the wind's picked up and it's blowing it across to the neighbours, and I'm not great fan of giving feed to the neighbours. Yeah, unless they need it.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think it's unfortunate that we didn't get the grass growth we wanted on the winter block this year, but it will be interesting to have the Regen on the grass and the conventional on a more conventional crop and see what impact that has, because they both were on the grass last season. So
a bit of context as well was we normally can rely on 22 to 25 ton fodder beet crops up in Mount Somers, and they're between 16 and 18 normally like every year without a doubt we're 14.5 to 15.5 ton of kale, and they're all like 9.5 to 10.5. So it's had about a 5 or 6 ton impact on our winter feed as well. So certainly, it's a season thing, not a management thing or yeah.
All right. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the end of the specific discussion. Do we want to talk about the plan for next season? Any changes planned?
Obviously the growing more grass is probably the biggest thing. Would like to try and keep the conventional at 1700 and try and lift the regen a little bit more, try and use less supplement. All comes down to grass growth and grass management, I guess, and what that looks like and how we can try and manipulate it a little bit more is probably the plan. So whether that's deferred grazing and that, you can't go into spring and think that you're going to start deferred grazing and you're on a longer round length and it's all rosy. I think people say that oh, you should be on a longer round length, or oh, you should have just deferred that or whatever. But like, okay, so what do they eat? Like it's I find it very frustrating when regen people come out and they say, oh, well, you should have just done that. But like, I didn't just wake up in the last ratio. We didn't plan on, not having the feed. So spring is really what sets you up. And like, I was actually quite happy. I think all farmers had enough feed last year and they grew enough. Did they have like huge amounts of surplus? Probably not. But on the last 2 seasons, we all had a horrific blip in December in the last 2 seasons, and that made a massive difference. So having a good December, I think, set everyone up for a really good year. So it kind of comes down to how the pasture curve goes and what actually happens, but it'll just come down to just trying to see if we can manipulate a little bit better. But and all in all, it's milk production and getting cows in calf.
Great. Rhys, anything to add?
Yeah, for me, it's we need to grow more feed when we need more feed. It's not that we need, everyone needs to grow more feed, don't get me wrong. Wouldn't it be great if we could all grow more feed? But it's around how do we utilize that feed. So for us, we're probably growing too much feed through the summer and not enough through the shoulders, and that's the bit that we need to try and optimize. So and that could be done through strategic fertilizer applications. It could be done through round length, it could be done through deferred grazing, it could be done through soil health optimization, it could be done through a range of different metrics. And for me, I'm really interested to start understanding which one of those has the greatest impact. What is the lowest hanging fruit through to the furthest hanging fruit, so that we can actually start rectifying some of these challenges. So that's the big one for me over the next 12 months, is just working closer with the team to try and find little opportunities that we can to collect data to then further enhance pasture production, especially in the spring and autumn. And I can I'll share some data with you now around some of the where we see some of the challenges are, and not so much what we're going to do about it, but I believe this clearly articulates some of the opportunity ahead of us that we need to try and rectify.
Yeah.
I don't think we know what we're going to do about it yet.
Yeah. So I guess when we first started, this is what we thought was diverse pastures. And this is probably what diverse pastures look like to us now. So they are still quite a grass dominated sward, but trying to maximize functional diversity. But this graph here was from 2 years ago now. 2 years ago now. So just for context, that up the side there is tons of dry matter per hectare, and down the bottom is every paddock within the farm business on Clearview. The black paddocks are our diverse paddocks with no no urea, which could be classed as the regenerative paddocks. The blue paddocks are also on the regenerative farm side, but they are the ones that we haven't introduced pasture diversity to. And the green paddocks are the white clover and nitrogen, or could be deemed the conventional paddock. So as you can see, we've got quite a range of there's no one side that really sticks out, but what does stick out is that the regenerative paddocks without diverse pastures are the poorest performing paddocks on our farm. We used to have 4 of them, we're down to 2 of them now, and that's because it was having a big impact on the regenerative farm by having too many of them. So on one hand, I'm saying there's something in diverse pastures that can unlock a lower impact farm system. So I'm a huge believer of diverse pastures. I think there's merit in it. I guess the challenge that we've had with diverse pastures is this is again pasture growth up the left side there. So kgs of dry matter per day. This is averaged over a month, and then the months down the bottom. So the target line effectively is kind of what would be great if we could get to this. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to grow less through the summer, so to speak, and more through the autumn and shoulders. If we can crack the red line, we'll be a much more profitable farming business. We could probably winter more cows on farm, and really maximise that opportunity and finances. The blue line is the Regen farm currently from 2 years ago. So as you can see, a really, really long tail out of the winter and to a really high peak through the summer, which you could argue is fantastic, and then a real harsh drop away again towards the winter. And the green line, for context, is the Lincoln University dairy farm. So what this graph really highlights is that we do have this rocket ship that Kiri speaks about, that we just really lag coming out of the spring, and we spike to quite a high peak and then we drop away. So for us, what are the opportunities within our toolbox, within the regenerative toolbox, to start growing more feed in early and late lactation, to try and optimize that? So it would be great if we could just grow 80 kilos of feed every day for the year, but that's hydroponics. We're not hydroponics. We're gonna follow the grass curve because that's how the climate works, and that's how weather works. So we understand that there's going to be a peak and a trough, but how do we try and optimize our farming business? So one of the reasons why we started planting diverse species, if we could get more winter active species within the mix, potentially we would grow more feed in the winter. However, that hasn't been the case to date. So items that we could look at is, what are the pasture species we're using? Are they functional? Do they need changed? Is our fertilizer regime adequate, or do we need to be adding more strategic applications of fertilizer? Do we have soil biology and soil function operating at the highest performance, or is there opportunities for improvement there? Do we need to use some form of cover cropping or cropping or deferred grazing in our pasture sward to try and maximise those areas? So these are the types of questions that we're asking ourselves now around how do we get from that blue line to that red line. And it's never going to be straight like that, but that you can get the concept of what we're trying to achieve. If we can get from blue to red, the profitability of this farming business will change instantly. You'll be able to milk less cows, but for longer, winter them on farm, so you don't have all those costs of taking animals off farm to get through the winter, and a real improved production and profitability. So that's kind of mission critical for us at the moment, is how do we rectify that?
Yeah. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else to add, we'll wrap this up. And as usual, if you have any questions or comments, we are all ears. So get in touch with us either through our website or even just comment on this video. Yep. And we will be back at the start of our 4th season in August. Thanks, guys.
Thank
you.